What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast. It's been a bit of a minute. Was moving, but I'm all situated now. We got three things on the docket today. First thing would be talking about the schedule, some tough stretches, some better stretches, where the Hawks schedule stacks up to the rest of the league, some benefits of the schedule, some disadvantages, although there aren't many, which is very rare for the Hawks, so that's awesome. The next thing we'll talk about is just somewhat about the state of the conversation around the Hawks because I do want to level set a little bit. Now, you all let me know if I'm being too realistic or a bit too pessimistic. I think sometimes when you're so close to a team, you're a little bit cautiously optimistic about a team as opposed to like being entirely excited. So we'll talk about that. And then finally, we'll talk about some very interesting takeaways, some big momental shifts in some of the play styles from guys who are competing in Euroleague. So right now, there are the friendlies going on that typically come on around like 1 to 3 p.m. Yesterday, both Latvia and France played. So that's Kristaps' team, Latvia and France from Zacch and we're seeing things from both of those guys that will bode very well for their translation for the Hawks if they can continue to play that way in the league. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the schedule. Shout out to Brad Rowland for posting the full thing over here on Twitter. So the first thing that I noticed when I look at the national TV schedules in general, last season and in prior seasons, it hasn't been as equal as a distribution in national TV games, right? So if you include NBA TV last season, the Hawks had 8 national TV games. So that placed them about 8th lowest in the NBA in terms of overall allocation. The only teams that had less national TV games were the Hornets, the Jazz, the Nets, the Bulls, the Wizards, the Pistons, the Blazers, and the Raptors. If you take out the NBA TV games, the Hawks had 2. So that includes being on ESPN, ABC, those networks. Now, this year, you're going to see a shift in how the NBA is going to be presented, right? So first off, you got NBC picking up basically where TNT is. I would sort of like view that as like the flagship broadcaster. And then you've got Amazon Prime and Peacock as where most of the other games will be telecasted. And then I do believe there are some ESPN games, maybe. Or actually, no, I think they're phasing them out. So, yeah, you'll basically be watching games across ESPN, ABC, NBC, and Amazon, and League Pass. So for the Hawks this season, they have 13 nationally televised games. Now, that is including both Peacock and Amazon Prime. In my opinion, I would imagine most people have Amazon Prime. And if you don't, you'll still probably be able to at least pay for it relatively cheaply as opposed to some other streaming services with the other things you do get with Amazon Prime Video. So I think that's great because it means that more games will be accessible for fans. And then if you take out the Prime and Peacock, well, Peacock is also pretty cheap as well. But if you take out Prime and Peacock games, the Hawks go to 6. So would like that number to be a little bit higher if, with the vast majority of them being broadcasted on these streaming services, including MLK Day, which I think is honestly kind of crazy. They already took away the MLK game day from last season. I think the Hawks probably deserve to be on either NBC or ABC this season, but I digress. So yes, they'll have 6 non-Peacock, non-Prime Video streams that will be on ESPN, NBC, or ABC. Another just overall league-wide trend, like I mentioned, they're being a bit more equitable with the distribution. So last year, the average of nationally televised games was a lot higher. So when you include NBA TV, it was around 18. When you don't include it, it was around 11. Median was 15 with NBA TV. Median was 9 without NBA TV. This year, it's down to 15.8 and 14 if you include the streaming services, and about 9 or a median of 6 if you don't include them. So the distribution is a lot tighter. And so I think that's pretty reflective of where the league is right now, right? I mean, you have some powerhouse teams for sure, but especially with some of the questions in the East, whether it's injury related with Boston and Indiana, Philadelphia as well, we're not really sure what Joel Embiid will look like. Milwaukee probably doesn't project to be as dominant as they have been in the past. There's more opportunity for teams to seize that spotlight. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, the Hawks seem to be a team in the East that's getting a lot of that attention. And it's good to see that the national level, the league is somewhat giving them the opportunity to get some of these games. I think that, honestly, they probably could have ranked a little bit higher. At 13, they're pretty comparable. Like Detroit has 3 more games. Milwaukee has 5 more. Orlando and Philly both have 1 more. So they're kind of like firmly in that second tier of Eastern Conference teams. Even if you're a small market, you get more games if you win, right? Like Cleveland's at 24. So I would anticipate with the way that these Hawks are trending, they'll get more national televised games in the future. Now, before we move on to just the overall state of the Hawks and some of the discussions around them, I want to share one of my favorite tools with you guys. So this is an awesome way to sort of process the NBA scheduling when it comes out. So this is a site that's called Positive Residual. It's awesome. It does a lot of really cool stuff. And so we'll sort of walk through it as I talk through the strength of schedule, some of their advantages, some of the disadvantages. So when you arrive on the site at positiveresidual.com, you'll click on like the schedule summary thing, and then it'll bring you to this page. So essentially what it calculates is based on, this is a Vegas estimate team strength, right? So it's based on, okay, what is your opponent's strength based on their projected over under from a conglomerate of Vegas sort of over unders, right? And then the strength of schedule factors in travel, whether you're at home, whether you're at away, elevation, stuff like that, how far the travel is, if it's on a back-to-back. And so they come up with this composite strength of schedule rating, which is this SOS right here. So you can see that the Hawks have the third best schedule in the NBA. This is because the East is weaker than the West. You'll notice that there are very few Western Conference teams in this top 10-ish outside of Denver, Houston, and OKC. Now, what's notable too is that the better teams are going to have a weaker strength of schedule, right? Because they're rated as one of the better teams in the league. And so because of that, they're going to have a big delta between their overall projected performance and the rest of the team's performance, which is why you see both Houston and OKC here, because they have one of the highest over-under, same thing as Cleveland. But Atlanta is pretty in the middle in the Eastern Conference, definitely above some teams like Philly or teams like that. But to have the third best schedule in the league, again, after we haven't had the best history with the NBA scheduling. So if you look at like 2023, 2024, we were still favorable, but not the best. Last season, I want to say we also weren't that favorable. So you can see here, we were closer to like league average. But this year, pretty decisively well off. Now, the other great thing, right? So if we this is sorted by the weakest strength of schedule. If we sort by the hardest, New Orleans, this is the team that we own their unprotected first round pick. They're gonna have to play in a really tough West. We know they can sometimes have some issues with injuries, although I don't want anyone to get hurt, but they have an issue with keeping guys healthy. This bodes well for the Hawks, right? Of course, they're gonna be playing at a tough West, but also just with the travel and everything factored in, their schedule looks to be a little bit tough. Now, the other cool thing you can do with Positive Residual is you can drill down into each particular team, look at their calendar. And so we'll do that and also look at some of their travel. So the Hawks have 10 rest advantages games, which basically means how many back-to-backs, how many times are you facing a team on a back-to-back, or when you have more rest than the other team. So you could have 1 day or 2 days more rest. And they all have 10 rest disadvantages games, which means they're going to be coming in with on a back-to-back or with less rest than the other team. So pretty equal there. That's great. Back-to-back wise, they're in the lower 25% of the league. So they only have 13 back-to-backs. Most of the NBA has 14 or more. And that's consequential. This could lead to 1 or 2 more wins in the season. That could be the difference between being a 4 and a 5 seed. You see rest advantages wise, they're kind of like league average. So nothing too crazy here. Some of these teams like Milwaukee and Cleveland got a little bit better. Mileage traveled, they're also not, among the league leaders. That'd be teams more like Orlando, which is interesting, but Orlando is down here, so maybe they just have to go a little bit further. These Florida teams, but the Hawks are kind of, they're in a good location where they can get to most teams without a ton of travel. Now, there's one more page I want to show you all. This is the schedule or like calendar look, and here we'll talk about some rough stretches, some of the better stretches. I think that the concept that you can know about a team from the beginning of the season, or like learn or what type of team this is from the very first 10 to 15 games, sort of a fallacy, right? Because it's such a small sample size. And for example, Indiana was not great in the first 2 to 3 months of the season. After January, they were the second best team in the league. So it's not to say that you can just always flip the switch like that, but it's less about the results of the games and how the team looks. And so in this beginning stretch, they're going to see Toronto, Orlando, OKC, Chicago, Brooklyn, Indiana, Cleveland, Toronto, LA Lakers. That's within the first 3 weeks. Toronto is going to be a hard team to play against. They typically give us some trouble. They are a bit disjointed offensively, but we'll see what they can do. They play a very up-tempo style, of course. They play very hard. So it's a good test to see where the Hawks are physically and overall with their conditioning. We do have some questions about Jalen Johnson, whether he'll be ready Not necessarily in terms of whether he'll play. I think he will play, but where will his body be because he's had to spend so much time rehabbing. Orlando is, again, a team that's going to have a lot of trouble. They're very physical. And then you have OKC, a team that's very good, very disruptive, very physical. So the great thing is that these three teams are all very high turnover creating teams. They're all very physical. And so we'll get a sort of sense for where the Hawks are physically. Then you get Chicago and Brooklyn. Those are teams where the Hawks should handle business. Historically, all my Hawks fans know we don't typically do that. So that'd be a great place to start. Then you get Indiana and Cleveland, and then Toronto and LA to finish out those first 3 weeks. So do I think the Hawks' record through this stretch will be indicative of how they perform throughout the season? No, but I do think there's trends that you can figure out or like glean from watching how they play in these particular games, particularly in those first three. How well do they take care of the ball? How do they respond to physicality? How are they effectively rebounding against a team like Orlando? How much does length bother them on the perimeter? Because while the Hawks did get taller this season, they did get a little bit slighter and they lost a little bit of length. So I think the toughest stretch comes in January. They're going to end up playing 9 away games, something like that, and only, I want to say, 6 home games. So they've got this big away trip that is broken up, thankfully, by a home game against New Orleans. But you got New York, Toronto, Denver, Golden State, LA, and then Portland. There's not really an easy game here. Portland, I think, will be very competitive this year. Though they're very similar to Toronto, where even if they might not win a lot of games, they're going to be very much so into games. February is pretty light. The great thing about the Hawks is that they have the least amount of travel after the All-Star break, right? So they're going to be at home a lot. They're going to be going to teams that are close to them. There's not like a massive road trip on the schedule that I see that's going to be super detrimental to the Hawks. And that's going to be helpful for guys like Porzingis, some of the older guys on the team. I would say overall, very, very favorable schedule, which is great. Like the Hawks, again, have gotten shafted in the past. Now, I do want to have like a quick conversation about where the national media and like people who aren't Hawks fans are talking about the Hawks. I'm seeing a lot of people say, oh, they're contenders or they should be in the Eastern Conference Finals. They have a realistic chance of making the finals. And to me, what really embodies this conversation, right? There's a Twitter account called Brett Usher. Usher NBA. So he posts like highlight reels, whatever it may be. He tweeted out last night, on paper, do the fully healthy Hawks have a single glaring weakness? And I just want to say, yes, there are a lot of weaknesses with this team. You've got a self-creation issue, right? Outside of Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis, we don't have anyone who is comfortable creating for themselves or others without out of structure or without a screen. Luke Kennard is capable, but doesn't do it consistently outside of structure without a screen. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, you don't want him orchestrating everything, but he can attack a closeout extremely well. Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson are the big question marks here, okay? First off, Dyson's going to have some troubles if he can't leverage his shooting. If he's not going to be able to pull up from behind the three-point line, teams will guard him a certain way that will make it tougher for him to get all the way to the basket, get to his spots. But he has the best handle on the team out of the guys that could realistically become self-creators. I think both Luke and Nickeil probably have a better handle, but Dyson probably has the best chance of becoming a perimeter creator. It will have to come along with the shot, but I think with his frame, his strength, his sort of craft with the ball, the way he plays off 2 feet, that would be probably my pick for someone to take a leap this season. And that's because if Jalen Johnson didn't have this labrum injury, I would feel a lot better projecting him to create for himself. Part of that is because he had to spend this offseason rehabbing, right? I don't remember when they said he'll be cleared for contact, but shoulder injuries are very finicky. You can't really work out and maintain mass when that's going on. And so he's probably working on his body right now. He is still working on his game 100%. And I think he will be better next season. But some of the stuff he struggles with are only going to be exacerbated by the fact that he has a hurt shoulder. He has a hurt shoulder. Sorry. Excuse me. And he was never really a type of player who would both seek out, embrace, and finish through contact. And we'll talk about that point a little bit later as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. Offensive rebounding. Clint Capella is no longer on this team. Clint Capella is a very frustrating player when he would miss putbacks. But when Capella was on the floor last season and over the last 5 seasons if you include 2021, the Hawks scored about 3 points more per 100 possessions on second chance points than they did with him off the court. And that's not just based off of the overall points, or that's not like an efficiency thing where he's generating more, and so the Hawks are scoring more. Sorry, it's not that he's like super inefficient, but you can see here in 2024, 2025, we're looking at these first two columns, right? Second chance points per 100 possessions. This is how many times the Hawks scored or generated offense after missing a shot, getting offensive rebounding. You can see that was about 2.79 difference, right? That's a big difference. It's the difference between being a top offensive rebounding team and a closer to one of the weaker ones. And those second chance possessions also, we saw a big difference. That's notable for me because the Hawks, in general, have been a team that is somewhat reliant on offensive rebound generation to have a good baseline for their offense. Because they are a very floater heavy team. When you're a floater heavy team, you have a lot of offensive rebounding chances because the ball tends to bounce, in that painted area. If you miss it, what we'll have to see is if that can sustain, not just without Clint, but not just about Clint's overall, his own offensive rebounding production. It's the fact that teams had to box him out. And so that led to a lot of, the ball's hitting the floor and one of the guards or the wings being able to step in and get put back because Clint has so much gravity as an offensive rebounder. They're not going to have that presence. When they play 5 out and they have KP above the break, maybe you're able to clear the lane enough for someone like Jalen or Dyson to come in and get offensive rebound. So let's see what that looks like. Similar to the self-creation things, driving and strength creation will be a question mark to watch for the Hawks. As of right now, I think that Dyson and Zacch will have to be the guys who are ripping through closeouts and going to the basket. We have seen a little bit of that from Zacch in Euroleague, which is good. That we've seen that from Dyson a little bit, stampeding off the catch. They're going to have to be able to understand that with KP on the floor, they're going to have a lot more space to work with. Now, he may not even be in a 5-out alignment, but even if he's in 4-out, 1 in, and he relocates back out to the 3-point line, you can really easily create driving angles for your team when you have a spacing 7-footer. So someone's going to have to capitalize on that. Trey is fast enough to do it, but he doesn't necessarily have the strength. So I don't expect Trey to, bump guys off the spot consistently. But I think he'll really benefit from getting those swing passes and then ripping through and going to the basket because he's so quick. But we need someone else there. And I think, to my point, I think it comes down to Dyson or Zacch. Jalen can do it as well. But it'll look probably a little bit different, a little bit more methodical. But if you watch, and again, this will be in my Porzingis breakdown close to when the season starts. But when you watch the Celtics, Jaylen Brown is this guy for them. Very decisive. He decides I'm going to attack the basket because I know it's completely vacated. Now, backup small forward is another thing. Zacch looks good in his French stuff, not just in terms of the way his body looks after some work on it, but the way he's playing, very physical, on the glass. We'll look at some of the clips. They will be undersized at the 3 pretty much anytime Zacch is off the floor. They could get creative. You could do a double big lineup to insulate, whether it's Nikhil at the 3 or Caleb Houston, hopefully not Veet. You could put Dyson there, but I think that while Dyson you can play the 3, I think he's best as the head of the snake at the point of attack. Maybe if you play a team where you can put Nikhil on the point of attack, you can do it. But generally, that's playing him out of position. I don't really want to see them do that. So that's, if you look at the 3 positions on the court that I believe will be undersized or have a physical disadvantage at, it'd be at point guard with Trae Young. It'd be at small forward when Zacch is off the floor. Or if you're playing a team like Orlando, again, not fair for Zacch to have to guard one of Franz or Paolo, but we have a physical disadvantage there against some of the bigger 3s in the league, at least coming into the season. I do think that gap will be a lot shorter than it was in Zach's rookie season, but it's something to monitor. And then at center, Kristaps, as skilled as he is, and Onyeka, as skilled as he is, there are a lot of centers who are stronger than them in the league as well. So when you don't have the ability to have that size in terms of strength or mass, you have to make up for it with instincts, length, and overall positioning. They can do it. They can definitely do it, but it's something to monitor. And it's why I don't feel like this Hawks team is completely without flaw. I had a big response here on my Twitter, but basically, I think that Jalen is in bottom 4. I don't think you really want him playing the 3. As I mentioned about the offensive glass, that's a big way to win the possession battle. The Hawks have won a lot of games doing that over the years. You will need guys to be aggressive enough, to be both aggressive enough and have a tight enough handle and finishing ability to capitalize on that space. And, if depending on Jalen's rehab, we'll probably have a strength and physicality disadvantage at those 3 positions, guard, wing, and center. We don't have anyone on the roster. It could be Dyson, Jalen, or Zacch that I think could grow into it. But right now, we don't have anyone that seeks out, embraces, draws, and finishes through contact consistently. We're more finesse than force, and we also got lighter this offseason. So you can win with finesse. You can be a very successful team in the regular season with finesse. You do need that strength creation in the playoffs when the physicality ramps up, or when you play a team that's really physical, like I mentioned with Orlando and Toronto. So the weight room will be a big thing to keep an eye on coming into the season. Like how much does Zacch belong physically? Can Dyson finish through contact instead of going to the floater, which is a nice weapon for him, but we want to see him get to the free throw line. We want to see him create those higher leverage and higher points per possession sort of looks at the rim as opposed to the floater. So, yeah, the Hawks are going to be a great team, in my opinion. I think we're going to be a lot more consistently competitive than we have in the last couple of years. 45 plus wins should be the benchmark. The Hawks do need to have a sort of statement regular season. They haven't had a strong regular season outing in quite a bit. I don't know if I'm ready to say, this is a conference finals team or a finals team. Again, maybe I'm just a bit pessimistic because I'm so close to the team, and as much as I see the strengths, I see the flaws. And I think when you're removed from the team and you only hear about the good stuff, you're like, oh, the East is weak. The Boston and Indy are out. It's going to be Atlanta or Orlando. But there's some questions, and they're not easily answered, and you won't know honestly until the season actually starts. So, yeah, let me know what you all think, because again, I may be a little bit too pessimistic, but let's move on to some of the Euroleague stuff. Shout out to Kevin from ATL29, writer for Hawks.com, for posting some of these clips. I did not get a chance to actually record some of the clips from these games, but I did get a chance to watch them. So we'll start with Zacch, because for Zacch, it's really important that, or also Grant Shirley is the one who clipped the Zacch ones. Shout out Grant. The big thing for Zacch has pretty much always been his handle and his strength, right? So we know that Zach's a very smart player. We know he's good positionally. We know he can shoot the ball relatively consistently. We need to see more volume and over a longer season, but his mechanics are clean and whatever it may be. So Zacch has really good feel in transition. He knows when to hit the gas, right? So here, even though he's the lowest player on the floor, he's already at this point outran three of Spain's players. Again, he was the lowest guy on the baseline. Outran his teammates, gets ahead, gives his guy an outlet pass, and the decision making here to go to the Euro and finish, really, really nice. Then the thing is, from this particular game, I think he had 12 points, and according to my guy Tyler Jones, he's because here's the thing, they don't post the box scores, so we're all pretty much estimating it unless we can find an article that says it. But I think he said Zacch had 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals. That seems from relatively in line to what I watched. He was very active. He didn't start this game. He had started the first 2 games, I believe. French tried out something different. This is a tough finish for him. It's not something that I think he would instinctively have done. So you see Spain collapse the defense, and he could have stayed out there in the corner, but with the way that Spain is crunching down on this player, it's a much tougher pass to get it all the way out there. So good instincts to pinch down to the dunker spot. The ball comes to him. He rises up for the contest. Looks like this Spanish defender gets the hand on the ball, but Zacch has the body control to bring it back down and finish. There are times where I feel like Zach's mechanics aren't great, both contesting and with his shots. Like, he gets up pretty high here, but this is a really pretty finish from him that, I don't feel like you would have earlier in his rookie season. So I believe this is a good defensive possession from him. So we're going to need him to be big on defense, right? So, and what I mean by big, like disruptive, but also use his length, eat up space, get over screen. So I love that, he opens up his wingspan as he gets to the ball. He contains it, pulls up the ball, prevents him from rejecting the screen. As the screen comes, he gets around it relatively well. He's going to trail. And when this guard gets downhill and his big picks up the guard, you're going to notice Zacch is going to act like he's going to double ball and then peel off to the big as soon as the guard gets a line of sight on the big man. And then he gets his hand on the ball, makes a play on it, and now he's out in transition. And we see him get a bit explosive and get all the way to the rack. So I never really feel like Zach's vertical pops off the screen, but his speed here is what I like to see, because you may not be the most explosive guy, but you can always be one of the fastest or the hardest working, right? and have the highest motor. So to beat this Spanish player to the ball, have the control to tap it ahead to his other hand instead of keeping it on the left side where it can be stolen, gather it, and then gather and finish strongly, right? Like that's a level of coordination that's really, really impressive, and happy to see him do that. Now, I will say I wanted to see France lean into him creating a bit more. He's not doing much with the ball in his hands. This would have been a really good time for him to do that. Unfortunately, they're not necessarily giving him that opportunity. Here, you can see his defensive instinct, so he's gonna tag just to make sure that big isn't open, and then the recovery ability to get back out to the corner, hand up, force that pass. Now the defense is going to reset. He's sitting on the weak side. Now he has to cover 2 because number 2 and number 6. And then he moves down to the corner again because look at where the line of sight is for number 44. So when he catches it, because number 3 is on the backside and you got Sarr sitting in his line of vision here, Zacch takes that extra step towards the corner, gets a hand on the ball, takes it. I think he turns it over here, or I don't exactly remember if he misses it or something like that. Yeah, so he ends up missing the initial shot. But again, look at the control in transition. I like that he's able to withstand that bump. In his first NBA season, if teams were able to crowd him in open space, or if they started being physical with him, he would lose the ball. Good to see him maintain his momentum there. This is a tougher transition look than most times. Like, I mean, the entire Spain team gets back, but awesome that he's able to be first to the ball after the miss, knowing he's going to miss, and he's able to get his left hand on it and tip it back in. I don't think Zacch is exactly ambidextrous, but I do think he has really good ability to play with both of his hands. I think this is another transition bucket from him, or it's the same clip. Yeah, so again, finished with 12 points, 6 rebounds. I don't have a clip from when it happened, but Tyler was saying that there was, and I remember seeing this too, there was a really aggressive board that he got while going through contact. The Hawks are going to need his rebounding. They're going to need the gang rebound. They're going to need him to be opportunistic on the offensive glass. If there's anyone I would want crashing, it'd probably be Zacch, just because he has the motor and the stamina to get back on defense. If he doesn't get it, I think he'll have some good opportunities to sort of veer around defenders and get on the glass. Again, because he has pretty good touch around the rim in those particular types of scenarios. Now, so if the biggest thing from Zacch is an increased ability to play through physicality and get on the glass, for Kristaps, I would probably say it's the passing. He is the focal point for this Latvian team, the Latvian national team. He has been for a very long time. There, of course, he has this 30-foot range too. Like, this is crazy to have someone else besides Trey being able to spot up from here. Trey pick and pops with KP are going to be hilarious because they could probably set it at the half court and both of them could shoot it if either defender sags off. So it'd be really interesting to see what that does to defenses. I'd imagine it'd be pretty tough. Kristaps finished with 22 points on 69 true shooting percentage, I believe. Let me double check the stats because I tweeted them out. Yeah, 22 points, 69.8 true shooting percentage, 3 blocks. Biggest thing, 5 assists. Okay, 5 assists. Now, I mentioned on Twitter that Kristaps is one of the better passing 7-footers in the league, but he's not one of the better passing big men. But at his height, relative to his height, very good passer. And it's because that he's able to pull so much of the defense in when he's posting up. So you can see here he has 2 white jerseys around him, and this is Lithuania, and he's able to find the relocating shooter and get it to him for a 3. This is also another good play. You're going to see a lot of this in Atlanta. He's going to set a screen. He's going to open up or pop, and he's able to make these reads out of the short ball. So when they put 2 on the ball against Trey, you're going to have cutters. So you see the gravity that he has. Both defenders are flying over to try and stop KP as he rolls, and he's going to get his head around and get it to the cutter from the corner. And then, so this is going to be Zacch or Dyson or Caleb Houston or Veet, and they're going to have to be ready and willing to go up and finish because these passes are going to be available for them. And before Onyeko was really starting, we didn't really have someone else to consistently do that. And then, of course, now you also get the spinning fadeaway ability. Like, he's going to be so much fun to watch in a Hawks uniform. And he looks healthy relative to where he looked like before the season started. Here he is going up against Valanciunas, who's a mountain of a man. Draws the offensive foul. Very physical with Jonas. Jonas is bigger than him, probably stronger, but I think that Kristaps was relatively effective against him. But yeah, they were going at it. it's if you haven't had a chance to watch these games, you can stream them on Courtside 1891. You can stream them on I think Kevin linked TV3 or something like that. But it's special to have a corner, a center who can run off of pin downs, right? So I would imagine like these types of screens will be Dyson. You could have Dyson come down and set a screen. This is a really powerful thing to do because reliably, even if you could switch a bigger guard on the KP on the perimeter, he's going to be able to shoot over him. You can shoot over most people, if not everyone, right? So you create a dilemma for the team because the guard instinctively doesn't want to switch onto the big, and he's going to be able to just shoot it over him anyways. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, so this game went to OT, I believe. So you see a KP face up. This is one of his favorite places to operate out of the post. He nearly had a chance to win the game here. The Hawks will probably post him around the free throw line, around the elbows as well. This is classic KP. He's going to face up, take up space with that lead foot, see if he can get you in the air with a pump fake, and then hope he could just get to a step back. Would have been a really tough bucket if he made it, but ends up missing it. And they did lose in overtime. Let's see. Here's another look at that Zacch coast to coast finish. Yeah, pretty nice, man. Again, he will have a lot of success in transition on this Hawks team. They've got a lot of guys who are going to get it up and ahead of him quickly, and it'll be important for him to again be able to capitalize on it. This is a good example of what I was talking about, where he rips through on the swing. So imagine this is in the Hawks uniform in State Farm Arena. KP draws two or Trey draws two. They kick it to the corner. Zach's gonna have to aggressively attack that closeout. Right, he's gonna have to rip through, get to the baseline, finish. This is a good look at it. So finishing through contact, you can see that the Spain player is on his right shoulder. He gathers, and he's able to finish through it. So yeah, a lot of questions about this Hawks team, at least in my opinion, that I don't think can be immediately answered. I don't think it's something that you answer with an acquisition either. It's probably something that they'll look to see who pops in training camp and then build the offense around that. Otherwise, they're going to throw a lot of different offensive looks and alignments at players. They're going to put KP in the slot. They're going to put him in the elbow. They're going to put him above the break. They're going to run pick and pops. They'll probably run Jalen as the main screener, is what I would imagine, with KP spacing. You can get some interesting offside actions. I think Luke Kennard and Nikhil are going to have some really interesting things too, but yeah, man. If you have not had a chance to watch the Euroleague tune-up games, they're going to be a good amount before Euroleague kicks off on the 29th, something like that. Around that time, I'll do a KP deep dive with some Celtics guys, getting my Premiere Pro subscription back together so I can get some videos out. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed this episode. Again, please give me some feedback on where you think this conversation around the Hawks is. It's awesome to have some national attention and to get some respect. And that's from both the over-under projections, but overall the conversation about the Hawks. It's very refreshing to be respected. It is some uncharted territory, quite honestly. I feel like we haven't had this much respect or hype as a team since that 2021 Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And honestly, in retrospect, I should have realized that that was a bit of an overachievement and we locked ourselves into a rougher team. But anyways, notwithstanding, I'm very excited for this season. I think there's so many interesting things, so many different player development things, so many different schematic things that the Hawks can do. And yeah, I'm going to enjoy the season so much. I hope you all did too. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. And I'll see you in the next one.